Welcome to the Nate KG podcast. I'm your host, Nate KG, and this is a show about jump rope where I connect with and share the stories of all types of jump ropers, including beginners, elite competitors, enthusiasts, and everybody else in this community. In this episode, I talk with jump rope legend Lee Reisig. This was an amazing podcast for me because Lee was one of the first jumpers I looked up to, and I've only increased my respect and admiration over the years for both his technical skills and overall jump rope knowledge. Lee's been jumping for a total of 28 years, 11 years in Montana with Rocky Mountain Ropers, 10 years in Idaho with Summerwind Skippers, then the last 7 years has been with Flight Crew Jump Rope. Flight Crew is a performance jump rope team that Lee founded and owns. It's also highly referenced on this podcast. Lee's first introduction to jump rope was a performance by the competitive team Proform Airborne. Funny enough, Lee wasn't very interested in jumping at first, but this performance inspired his mom to want to start a team. Lee ultimately got hooked on jumping after he saw his first staff show. Since then, he's become quite a decorated athlete. He's an 8-time FISAC medalist. He holds 9 Grand National Championships, 3 World Jump Rope titles. He's a 2-time semifinalist on America's Got Talent. He ranked 5th place on America's Best Dance Crew Season 5 and has 10 years of professional performance experience, including Cirque Dreams, Cirque du Soleil, Disney Cruise Line, Disney theme parks, and SeaWorld. And if that's not enough, he's also the inventor of the Jumphabet, which is the main focus of this episode. In short, the Jumphabet is a dictionary, naming system, and sequence builder for every jump rope skill that exists. It's absolutely incredible, and I would highly recommend heading over to the show notes at natekg.com because I have PDFs linked there of Lee's original work that you can download. We go deep into jump rope theory on this one, so buckle up and please enjoy my conversation with Lee Reisig. Lee, thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, Nate, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think, this is going to be really fun for me because I've spent, well, first of all, you're one of the first people I've watched and learned from in jump rope, but also I've spent so much time watching a bunch of your videos and stuff that there's plenty to get into. So I guess a good place to begin would be the Tricktionary and the Jumphabet. And can you describe what those two are and where they came from and how you created them?
Okay. So sure thing. But before I get into it, I want to make sure that we distinguish between my Tricktionary and Dylan Plummer's Tricktionary. He has a list of tricks and an app, I believe, that goes with it. And it's just building and building and building. And he also calls that the Tricktionary, which I think it actually goes better for what his product is versus what mine was. But I did call it the Tricktionary back in the day, so we'll just refer to it as that. So what it is so the Jumphabet was a system of naming tricks, and you can see some of the other jumpers online do the same thing. Like, for instance, if you're gonna write down a quintuple under, side open cross, you'd say SSOOC. So it takes that principle, but it applies it to every single position that is possible in jump rope. And so I was doing this in college, and I kind of dove down this rabbit hole of well, what are the possible combinations of arm movements and where can you possibly go? Because if you look at the Jumphabet and then you look at like a standard routine, most jumpers don't use more than probably 10 positions, and there are hundreds, right? So
what are those 10 positions? Just curious.
So the big ones are like side swing, open, cross, EB, toad, Kruger, EB toad, EB inverse toad. You've got AS, CL, and TS. Those are kind of the big ones, right? But you hardly ever see somebody who does a toad with the arm over the head, or a toad with one arm behind the knees and the other one under the leg. Those they were called AS weaves and CL weaves back in the day, but those positions that are pretty rare. And then when you get into things like go-go's, where you're crossing one arm in 2 pathways, that just blows it up even more. Or what we call Kruger crosses where you start in a Kruger and then you take that arm leg combination and you can cross it in front of you, behind you, and then the other arm can go over the head, behind the back, under the knees, all these other combinations. You get very few people who have done one of those skills, let alone all of those skills. So there's just a whole bunch of possible arm leg combinations, and they really just stem off of 10 common positions, which are, your arm is like, if you look at one arm, it can go in an open position, it can go across the body in front, it can go across behind the body, behind the back, behind the knees, under one leg from the opposite side, like a toad, or like an inverse, or like a Kruger, or like the inverse Kruger. There's a chicken wing arm position, and there's behind the head.
Can you describe the chicken wing?
Yeah, so it's you're going to take your right arm and put it under your right armpit as if you were like flapping your elbow, That is one of the positions that is rarely used. But if you think about it, you can do one arm in that position, and then your left arm can do any of the other 10 combinations. So right there's 10 crossing moves that nobody ever does, because a chicken is pretty stupid in my opinion, but it exists. So I wrote it down and gave it a thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So
when you were creating this, I'm curious, like, you have all this in your mind, you're thinking about this in depth because clearly, you're a master at jump rope. How did you begin creating the system? Because you have all these raw thoughts that we're talking about now, but how did you take all this and put it into a system for the Jumphabet or for the Tricktionary?
So the original way it started was I was making up a routine and I was trying to get like a multiple combination together. So I'm like, okay, what quadruple unders do I know? So I'm writing down SC, SCEB, SCO, so I can, write down all the tricks that I know and figure out which ones do I like the best and put them in the combinations. So as I'm writing these symbols, I'm realizing that if I rearrange the symbols, I have a new trick that I haven't even tried before. And so I just started mixing the symbols in different ways so that I could, come up with brand new tricks. And so from there, I created a list of 300 quadruple unders. And this was back in the day when, there was no Instagram, there was no MySpace even, and everything was text-based online chat and stuff. So I wrote out this list of 300 quadruple unders and I posted it on the USA Jump Rope website. And was like, hey guys, here's what I did. And I got a lot of really cool feedback from it. And so I was like, all right, I like this idea. Now let's see if I can take it bigger, right? So that it's not just quadruple unders and it's not just 300, it's all the possibilities, right? So I'm thinking about, okay, well, why don't I just have a system that can spit out quadruple unders? So you've got SOOO, SOOC, SOCO, SCOO, and so it keeps on going. And so as I'm manipulating these symbols, I realize, well, not every symbol can go one after another. For example, you can't do a cross into the EB, right? You have to have a swing before it. Does that make sense? So there are certain combinations that just don't work. So instead of printing out this master list of thousands and thousands and doing, this one will work, this one doesn't, this one works, this one doesn't, I started recognizing the rules, so to speak, of what tricks can follow which other tricks. And that was sort of the genesis of the Tricktionary, which is, it's a chart. For those of you who haven't seen it, it looks very similar to like a periodic table. And it's got the symbols of all the tricks you can do, but they're arranged in such a way that you can see the flow of which tricks can go to which tricks and which tricks cannot go to which tricks. So there's all sorts of rules and patterns that you start to realize by using this tool. And it was a really good study of single rope for me. So now I can understand all the patterns you can do, how tricks can cross, and it's actually just really cool to see, to think about jump rope in this way and to kind of understand it rather than just learn a trick that somebody showed you. You can actually understand why it works, why it doesn't work.
That's really cool. I have two follow-up questions. One, what do you think about me placing these documents on the website to share? Would you be cool with that so that people can see
absolutely.
it?
When I originally made it, I sent it out for free for people to look at and to use. So,
Okay,
I'll
cool.
send you a copy and you can give it out. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely link that in the show notes for sure, because this is definitely worth checking out. The follow-up to that, when you mentioned swing a cross, like in a quad, a cross can't go directly into an EB. Is there a rule or an exception for doing a cross into I've been calling it a dive EB, but basically where you do an open, and as you're doing that open, one hand goes behind the back and the swing is late in the EB. Is there an exception for that?
So
because theoretically you could
open,
do like swing cross and then one hand goes behind the back and then you swing and land in the EB position.
right. You have to pass through the open position to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are different categories of skills, so to speak. So cross is what I call a front cross skill, where all the action is in front of your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So toads are a front cross, crisscross is a front cross, anything over the head is a front cross. Then you have skills that are all behind the back, TS, CL, AS. Those are what I call back crosses. EBs are in a category that I call half crosses, which is one arm's in front of your body, one arm's behind the body, right? And that also goes with like EB toad, EB inverse, things like that. So to go from a front cross to a half cross, you have to pass through, one of your arms has to go into the open position. You can either swing or you can go straight through with an open jump, if that makes sense. And it's a little easier to show if I have the document in front of you, but it's laid out in a way that you can actually see it on the chart. You go, okay, I can go from this through this to get to here, and I can go from this through this to get to here, and then if you go the other way, you can go straight from this to this, and it's easier to do it with the document, but
because it's it's actually super visual, as are most things in jump rope. So when I was at RX Smart Gear, I put together a freestyle, basically curriculum to learn freestyle. And when I was there, I was putting in the skills that I was focusing on were very elementary skills. They already had a learning curriculum for double under specifically because their market was CrossFit. And when I came on board, I elaborated on that to include some freestyle skills, but I stayed with basically just crosses, a couple of advanced style crosses, and then, covering the gamut of strength stuff, and then a little bit of multiple stuff, crosses, releases, that stuff. When I broke down the crosses, I have a question for you about this. When I broke down all the crosses, I separated them by upper body crosses, lower body crosses, and ground crosses. So upper body would include, obviously, EB, front cross, over the head, all that stuff. And then lower body would be anything that involved a leg up in like a high knee position or all those variations. And then ground cross was obviously like caboose, AS, CL, all that stuff. What do you think about that in terms of categories? Because I haven't revisited this in a while, and I'd like to revise if necessary. And as we're talking, I'm already aware that I've missed a couple of the nuanced crosses, like a chicken and stuff. So I'm curious what you think about that.
Right. So that is one way to do it, and that's one way that like judging systems typically score crosses. Like you have an arm only cross, and then you have an arm leg cross that's more difficult. And that's a very legitimate way of thinking about crosses, especially when you're talking to a CrossFit person or a recreational person who, they're not really into the study of jump rope. They want to just do like a cool trick kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I didn't do that with the Tricktionary system is because the patterns, for example, you take an EB and you take an EB toad, right? With how they link trick wise, those are more close related. Those are nearly identical. You just put a leg in the way, right? So
Right.
EB toad, EB inverse, those three are more related than a crisscross is to an EB,
Yeah, I
because
see what
you
you're
have one arm
saying.
in front of the body, one arm behind the back for all three of those crosses, right? Same with like a toad and a cross, a toad, a cross, and a inverse toad and a elephant toad. Those ones, all the action is in front of the body, and so those are all more closely related to than they are to an EB and an EB inverse and an EB toad. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's the way that they link. And I've got a good drill that kind of illustrates this. If you were to do like swing cross EB, swing cross EB, swing cross EB, right? You can
moving
that,
left to right across your body. So like left swing,
yeah,
cross, right swing, EB.
yes,
Okay.
left swing cross, right swing EB, and then you just do that back and forth, right? So then it's right cross, left EB. If you were to do that, you can change it up to go swing toad, swing EB, swing toad, swing EB. Or you can do swing cross, swing EB toad, swing cross, swing EB toad. Or you can do swing toad, swing EB toad, swing cross, swing EB toad. You know, so the pattern stays the same. You're just basically moving a leg in the space of the cross. So to me, that sort of shows the hierarchy of the arm crosses with the leg crosses, but it also keeps everything in their front cross, half cross relationship as well.
So I get it. So you're actually breaking the skills down. So when I was thinking about it, I was thinking it from basically a frontal view, staring directly at a person. But if we take a different, cross section, if you will, of a profile view, looking at the side of a person, you're also breaking it down by what actions, what hand placements occur in the front of the body, halfway split, and behind the body.
Yeah, that's where I'm taking the cross section. So if you look at a side view of a person, all of the skills I categorize as front crosses are when the rope is over their head to under their feet. All the action is in front of their body, right? A back cross, all the action is behind them. So that's the AS, the CL, the TS, everything where they're crossing the rope behind them. A half cross is where they have one arm in front of their body, one arm behind their body.
That is a majorly big distinction, and I'm really glad I talked to you about that, because you've just helped me tremendously. That makes a massive difference, and that makes a lot more sense. And I'm not surprised either, but that is way different. So
cool.
Yeah. So
I'm glad I can help.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's important to put a little pin in this right now, that people understand how extensive your history is. And I've already done a little bit of a pre-roll for this episode on all that, because we're keeping our time pretty strict. But you have such a massive amount of knowledge. There's a post that you put out probably in 2010, I think, where you're in a parking lot and you do an entire combination with one arm behind your back. It's like a giant EB combination. And
yeah, it's one of my favorite videos I've done. I love that one.
I mean, it's incredible. Like, where did that come from? And if you haven't seen it yet, I'll link it up in the show notes, because you need to see this. But it really highlights your proficiency with any jump rope movement. But where did that combo come from?
So I was doing a series where I was just trying to do like a trick of the day or a combo of the day, just to challenge myself to come up with new things every day. Because a lot of times I get in my head, and I'm sure a lot of jumpers do out there as well, where you're making a routine and it has to be the most perfect routine that you've ever created. So a lot of times you think and you're like, oh, that's not good enough. Oh, that's not good enough. And you say no to a lot of ideas, and you don't ever actually do them.
That is
because
so
you think
true.
they're not going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So my combo of the day was just a chance for me to say, I'm going to try this and see what happens. And from that, I produced a good chunk of things that were really cool and I liked. And I also produced a ton of stuff that I will never do again, but it's nice to just get that out there. And this combination was one of those where I just thought, okay, I'm going to see how long of a combination I can do with one arm behind my back, and just make that today's post, right? And I started messing around with it and going, okay, well, I can change direction with my arm behind my back. I can do this cross. I can do this cross. I can do multiples. I can spin around. And so I just started messing with that for a good hour. And I was finally able to make this combination, which I ended up competing it one year because I ran out of ideas, and I was like, oh, let's bring that combo back and see how people respond to it. So, yeah, it was one of my favorite videos I've done.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, it's funny because whenever when I watch you jump, and this has been the case for the past 10 years, when I watch you jump, I look at what you're doing. I'm like, man, that's really cool, and it looks really doable because of how easy you make things look. And then I go practice, and I'm like, nope, not nearly as easy as it. Like that EB combo is a perfect example because you look so fluid. I actually have a question about your backwards skills. And this is really specific, but I've been so curious about it for a long time. When you do, I think it's a backwards awesome Annie quad where you swing into an inverse toad and then you do regular toad out. I think there's probably a swing in there. You kind of like wind up for it, almost in like a tricking style where you kind of have like a quarter turn and it seems like you're swinging on the ground or like setting up, and then you like rise up into the quad versus like most other quads I've seen, you elevate and then everything happens in the air. Is that a style thing? Is there utility? Like how did you come about doing that skill or different permutations of that skill that way?
So for that particular trick and similar ones, you have to basically swing in under immediately. So it's not like you do swing normal and then go under the leg. It's like you have to swing under the leg. That's the very first swing, right? And so that's a weird thing for a jump roper to do because they're trained to leave with both feet, do a swing, and then do whatever the trick is in the air. So yeah, that little wind up is necessary for me to just get the rope in the right place. Also, it allows me to swing the leg through sort of like a tricking thing or like a layup is what I think about. So I can drive my leg up while I'm jumping so that I can get height, because it's also very difficult to jump off of 1 foot high enough to get that trick. So you have to swing to kind of get that momentum. So yeah, that's a little style thing but it's also very important for the trick.
So the utility of it is that when you're doing that, because I've watched you and your arm is so tightly tucked underneath your leg, you're actually using that arm to pull your body up a little bit to give like a little bit of an assist.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I'm gonna have to put in some work on that. Okay, I could go off on like a million different tangents right now, but let's. I'm gonna bring myself back into focus here. We've gone over Tricktionary and Jumphabet, and that is. It's just really incredible that you were thinking about all of these things and all the system when you were, because how long ago was it that you created that?
That was when I was in college. So it was around 2005, 2006 was when I was finishing that up.
You've done so many things ahead of the curve, and I was going back and looking at your skills, like, you know, the bombs, like the AS bomb and the CL, like, so push up and then AS double under or CL double under and then back down into a push up. Like all of that when you were doing it is ridiculous because you don't even see those skills that often now. And it's super impressive.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. The AS one was 2003, I think was when I first did that one.
2003. That is. How many people have done just out of curiosity, how many people have done an AS bomb that you know of? Obviously not an exact number, but like that you've seen.
Right. No, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's more now because I mean, people are doing probably near triples. If I think there has been like a push up triple out there.
Really?
But people
triple up or in a kamikaze?
I think triple up. I don't think it's been a kamikaze or maybe it was a frog triple, but there are people who are doing some ridiculous things. And I think I've only seen, a handful of people do an AS bomb, but I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who could. So I don't know. I want to say 10 to 15, but I'm sure that now there's so many more people
That's still a
capable.
very, very small amount of people.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the new drill that's coming out now with the push up double under coming up, and then double under frog, double under down, and then just repeating that over and over and over.
I did see that, and
But
I gave it a shot.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
insane. I gave it a shot, and I was like, I'm gonna need to warm up and get a little stronger before I actually am able to
yeah,
complete that. That's insane.
yeah. So I'm sure that anybody doing that challenge uh, could probably do the AS bomb skill. So it's crazy what these guys are doing.
What have you? Now, I want to ask you about how things have changed over the years, and we'll get to that in a second. But because we're on it, what do you see as the top tip, or maybe the top two, however you want to break it down, for getting height in a kamikaze push-up? Because I feel super confident when I'm doing a kamikaze push-up, and then I try something like, an AS bomb, and it's just like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm wondering what kind of like tactical tip helps you get that elevation.
It's all the hip drive. You can be as strong as you want, muscles with your shoulders and everything. Um, but for me, like, I'm not a guy who can bench press a whole lot, right? But because I can drive my hips up so hard, that's the number one, I
Okay.
think.
That's what I had a feeling that's what it was, but I wanted, is it, so it's mostly then core strength and not arm strength?
Right. It's a lot of body position. So core and just being able to like fold in half. And typically for me, when I'm trying to get super high on a push up, like a backward kamikaze or any of these double under kamikazes, I tend to hit my knees on the ground. I don't know if that gives me a little extra boost or if I'm just trying to sink in a little bit more so I can
Mm,
pop up a little bit harder. But that's one thing that I tend to do. I don't recommend it, but and then I also, you gotta have like a real strong, like, I've got a little image in my head of like just exploding out of that, because it's, yeah, you've got to be really high, really tight,
hmm
and push for all you got.
Cool. So yeah, let's move into how things have changed, because you've been in the sport for a very long time. You've done so much. Your knowledge is very deep. What have you seen change and evolve over the years with all aspects of jump rope too?
Right. Okay. So the biggest one I can think of was the invention of the Mick. I've been jumping long enough that I was around probably 10 to 15 years before anybody ever did a Mick, which is mind blowing to
That
some
is
people out there, I
that is
know, because
extremely mind blowing. Yes.
yeah, yeah, like there would be two or three people in a competition who would be like the released guys, and they were the ones that you know, sometimes it was because they couldn't do push-ups or frogs very well, so they had to find something else to do, or sometimes they just they came from more of a like a they wanted to look more dancey or things, so they would do a couple releases, but releases were not a big thing, and even the ones that were doing releases were not doing a mic. And then suddenly somebody came up with it. I know Mike Fry was big into it. I know Shane Windsor was big into it, and the Eisenhart girls from Seattle were big into um, kind of like the invention of the mic. And once that came out, it took off, man. And suddenly, like, I remember having tournaments where like it was a requirement to release the rope X amount of times because nobody was doing it, and people were like, well, this should be part of
Hmm.
the repertoire, so you have to do it. And
That's really
everybody
interesting,
was
actually.
groaning, yeah, yeah. And so yeah, once it came out, then people started, exploring that idea. Well, what if you did it under the leg? What if you did it behind the back? What if you did it while spinning? What if you did it with double dutch? That was a big thing too. And so you'd see things take off, and it did what I think the rap game is doing now,
Hmm.
where people are sort of obsessed with it, and it became like, routines were very, very mic heavy. And now it's kind of cooled down a little bit because the rap game is such a big thing. Now the rapping is everything. All the routines are kind of rap heavy. And so you kind of see these waves come and go. And I think eventually something else will be invented, and the rap game will bit, or at least get a little bit more, I don't know, defined as what good raps are and what bad raps are.
That makes sense.
So that's kind of the direction things have been going now. As far as Double Dutch goes, I haven't seen a whole lot of new things in that direction. More turner involvement has been a thing, especially in America, and then also just the globalization. DDC and fusion style jumping has become bigger, so that's a more popular competition now worldwide, at least anyway.
Have you thought about doing a Tricktionary for Double Dutch?
Yeah, so I've thought about like a system to classify how you're turning. Is it, are you doing up the ladder? Are you doing what I call ghost counts, which is the rope is out to the side and you're not actually scooping the person? Are you crossing? Are you going under the legs? Things like that. So I have thrown around that idea for Double Dutch and with wheel. I haven't done anything on that yet, but hopefully when my project lines up, I can start to kind of dive into that. But yeah, that's something I'd really enjoy doing as well.
That's really cool. So, okay, next thing that I want to talk about is jump rope movies. I know I know that a couple exist. I really want to focus on the one that you created, but I do also have some questions about the documentary Jump. So I know that you created Welcome to Jumptown. I know Jump, the documentary, exists. I've seen Double Time, and I've seen a couple of Peter Nessler's fusion videos he did. Are there other movies that exist in the jump rope space?
I mean, there's Jump In by Disney, which isn't a very good jump rope movie, but there are some jumpers in there who play either stunt doubles or play rival or extras at a jump rope tournament kind of thing.
Yeah. The number one most referenced jump rope movie ever that every competitive or jump roper in general gets asked about.
Right. And fortunately, everybody knows that that's not how our tournaments are run, and like there's very little trash talking in jump rope. Which is a good thing. So, but yeah, those are the main ones I know about. I also did another one before Welcome to Jumptown that was called Jump Rope Evolution. It was kind of there was no storyline. It was basically like what people are doing now with, what happened in 2019. These are the best videos that came out. So it was kind of something like that.
Okay.
Sort of like a highlight reel. It was kind of my take on trends in jump rope. It was, it was just a lot of my opinions on jump rope and what I thought really cool jump rope looked like and stuff. But yeah, those are the ones. I think those are the big ones.
So where did Jumptown come from? Why did you create that?
So again, this was before the internet was as easy to like post videos as it is now. And so I wanted to kind of show off a lot of the cool things that I was doing in jump rope that I wouldn't be able to show at a competition. So I was jumping rope with fire. I was jumping rope kind of combining parkour with jump rope. I was doing LED jump rope. And so I made this up as a sort of an excuse to show people all the cool things you can do with jump rope. And so I made this storyline up about two rival gangs who were jump ropers, and it was in a futuristic place where jump rope kind of, everybody jumps rope and you get in your little gang and you'd fight all these other gangs and stuff and for rights for the turf or whatever. So the story is about two rival gangs, and there's a scene where the bad guys are jumping rope with fire, and then there's a scene where
there's so much good stuff in that movie that it's really hard to pick. Out of curiosity, you have two like symbols, the certifiably awesome and registered badass. Is that correct?
Right.
Is the badass logo the current flight crew logo?
It's not the current one, but it was the inspiration for the current one.
That's great.
Yeah. So I took that idea with the V's and the jump rope. And actually, that symbol comes from a guy named Sten from Belgium. And he has this tattoo. When I saw it, I was like, oh, he's got a little Asian symbol on his shoulder. It's pretty cool. And then you look closely at it and you realize it's a jump roper. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. So I tried to draw something similar to that. And that's where these two symbols came from. And then I really liked the Registered Badass one and started drawing a whole bunch of different versions of that. And that's where the current Flight Crew logo comes from. And also the pictures for all of my I forgot to mention the DVDs I have called the Jumpropedia. All of those are similar icons, but one's doing double Dutch turning, one's doing wheel. So
So what is the Jumpropedia?
The Jumpropedia is a DVD set I made. It's probably close to 6-7 years now, and it was basically a everything I know about single rope in DVD form. So there's a DVD on footwork, DVD on swings, one on crosses, one on rope manipulation or rope releases, one on multiples, one on power, and then one called advanced crosses, which is where you get into like leg wraps, threading, jump wraps, all the weird stuff that you don't really see anywhere but exist.
What's an example of threading?
So you take an arm wrap, and there's a section of rope that's wrapped on your arm, right? And then there's a section of rope that comes from your wrapped arm to your regular hand. Threading would be where you're jumping over that little spot while you're doing the arm wrap.
Yep, I get it. So
sense.
yeah, so when most people do wraps, they do it as compact as possible to keep the rope in its maximum length. But you're saying do a wrap where you're effectively cutting the length in half, and then you're jumping the shorter section that's connected to the non.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So that's like an example of that would be kind of like what Seth has done recently with where he does like a multiple wrapping the rope around his hand and then like reverses it and goes backwards out of it.
Right.
Okay, cool. Wow, so you've done a whole lot of educational and just jump rope stuff. And how long did Jumptown take to create again?
It was about 2 years.
That's a long time. And then
yeah.
So did you use Sony Vegas to create that?
Yeah.
Okay,
how did you know?
Because I think I asked you about it a long time ago, and I'm fairly certain that because I asked you about that when I purchased Jumptown, that became the first editor that I used for video work. So that was kind of like my intro into video editing, and since then I've grown into a lot of different editors and use different stuff, but that was like the very first one. Which is really cool for me. Yeah. Okay, next subject to go on to, because I know we're running up on time here, so I don't want to keep you too long. But the rope show. Let's talk about the rope show, because I went back and binged a couple of those episodes. What was the intention of the rope show, and kind of what was it for people who don't know?
So the rope show is kind of basically what Jump Rope Evolution was, but it was just an episode form of the show. And I was, trying to make a show where we could talk about common jump rope things, or talk about the general discussions around jump rope, like, the organizations or any politics that come up, or common trends in routines or challenges. So it was just kind of like a fun talk show that involved jump rope. And I say talk show, but it was mostly just me telling you what I think about jump rope. So, so there were some fun episodes in there. One where I was introducing my LED ropes. I remember there was another one that talked about the Jumpropedia and Tricktionary. I don't remember a whole lot of those because
they're so long ago.
Yeah, so long ago, and nothing out of them was really amazing. but yeah, I would put some of the tricks of the day situations there, and so some people enjoyed it. I think the best thing about that show is the introduction. I love that little intro, but yeah, not the greatest thing I've ever done, but it was fun.
But it's cool for the culture of jump rope, like, and especially now for me to go back and rewatch them. It's really fun to see what was current, what was going on, and it's also cool to see that. I would say I'm probably a generation or two after you, probably
Mm-hmm.
two, because you've been in it for so long. Probably three actually. But like in terms of like the chunks of time of different generations of jump rope growing up, I'm pretty far behind you and even like Mike Fry. But it's
Mm-hmm.
fun to see when certain things were a big topic, because for me, I've experienced them at different times. An
Right.
example of that would be like I guess like the bombs and like certain quads and quintuples. From my own history, I haven't seen those. I did not see those until later in my career. And I look back at these videos, like I saw one of you doing a trick battle with Sibo, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys were putting down like quints and bombs and like crazy stuff that now that I go back, I'm like, wow, that was happening a long time ago, but you still don't see those skills very often, you know? So it
Right.
was really cool to see that. Because we were talking, I thought back to a question that I had earlier about competition. We were chatting about competition rules and how things are structured. What are your thoughts on that as they stand? Or I guess they've changed a lot over the years. So we could talk about the evolution of competition rules, but I actually have recently done the content requirement for
Mm-hmm.
I think it was an AMJRF competition, and I judged. So I'm curious what your thoughts are as someone who knows the extreme depth of all the skills that are possible.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start by saying I haven't read a judge's manual in probably 10 years, so I'm not up on the current rules and everything. But I think one of the big things that I see when I watch jump rope as a sport is the rules are what dictate what the routines are going to look like. And there comes a point where just because something is more difficult doesn't mean we should be rewarding it. For example, I have this analogy with basketball, right? If you were to suddenly say that a header in basketball will give you a 10-point basket, right? That would suddenly change the way that basketball is played.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be any more slam dunks. There wouldn't be any more 3-pointers. Everybody would be trying to go for the headshot, right? And suddenly the sport would change, and it might not be the phenomenon it is now, because everybody loves a good slam dunk. Everybody loves a good 3-pointer from way away from the basket. And the similar thing with jump rope, right? Just because I can turn double dutch with one arm under my leg, yeah, it's more difficult, but suddenly you're making all the routines. That's all these people want to do is put one arm under their leg,
Mm-hmm.
and it to me it looks pretty silly. Where I'd much rather see Turner involvement that is more like over under jumper situations, like where we incorporate a subway into the turning, or a flip into the turning, or a leapfrog, or something that you're using the other person as a body,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just this is a more difficult way to turn. So the double dutch rules that I've seen kind of drive me nuts in a little ways, that we're telling people to do these things because, yeah, they're more difficult, but it makes the sport look kind of silly. And when you show somebody jump rope, you don't want to show them some of the routines that score really high, because they do honestly look silly. And yeah, they're very technical, they're very difficult to do, but the drawback is that they don't draw an audience, which is what jump rope needs to do.
Well, there's just so much more you can offer.
Right, right. Single rope, I tend to think, is more on the right track. I think one of the problems with single rope is that there are certain skills that are very easy to determine difficulty, and those are multiples and those are crosses. Once you start getting into releases and wraps, which are kind of popular right now, Power skills are also very easy to determine difficulty, so that goes there. But there's a lot of swings and a lot of wraps that people just don't know how to judge because there is such a gray area there. So you tend to see a lot of routines, especially in international competitions, where those parts are basically eliminated, and you see a routine that is full of multiple skills, crossing skills with a little bit of power sprinkled in. And I tend to see jump rope as six categories: footwork, swings, crosses, releases, power, and multiple unders. And I want to see a master's level routine. To me, has all 6 of those at a very high level, also while being a performance that looks great. A lot of jumpers nowadays are so focused on the technical that there's very little eye contact with an audience. There's very little musicality. There's very little form perfection. It's all, did I do the right crosses in the right time? Is that a level 7 skill or a level 6 skill? And again, it's very difficult to draw an audience if that's all you're thinking about is the technical side of it. And jump rope needs to be a little bit more of the performance side. Like you watch a fusion competition, right? Those competitions are so for an audience. That is why that competition has blown up, because that there is that aspect of entertainment where I think the international audience or international jump rope could use a little bit more of that. I'm not saying go full fusion in DDC, but just a little bit more of that in the judging system would be great.
What do you think about? Okay, I have more follow-up questions. Every time you say something, I get 10 more things I want to ask you about. First, so why would you consider swings to be in their own category? Because so the way I've been looking at it up to now, and the way I present it, if I'm doing like a quick little demonstration to a group of people, is I would break it up in terms of footwork, multiples, strength, and then I just put manipulation as its own category, which includes releases, swings, crosses, all that kinds of stuff. Why do you have swings as its own category?
I mean, if you look at a lot of the things that are going on now, for example, let's take Zach Tomlinson, right? He can do an incredible. Sorry, when I say swings, I also mean wraps as well.
Okay.
He'll do an incredible rope manipulation sequence without releasing the rope a single time. And it's not necessarily a cross either because he's barely jumping the rope. But to watch him wrap that rope around and manipulate it the way he does is so incredible. But it's not a release and it's not a cross in the way that I categorize those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I give it its own category. And then also releases, releases is a very big category. A lot of people just think of releases as mix, but now floaters are getting a lot more credit. So you've got mix, you've got floaters, you've got things where the rope more or less hangs off the arm. You've got tricks where you're having the rope in a different body part other than the hand,
Mm-hmm.
which are what I call holds. So you've got several different categories in the releases, and the swings and wraps have their own thing. Crosses are also like, that's where you get your switch cross AS and TS, which Europeans and Australians are very, very good at doing crossing skills. And that's also where the go-go's are involved. So that to me is its own category, because they tend to be really good at crossing skills, but they don't wrap the rope very much or don't release the rope very much.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I can see a distinction between those. Yeah.
Okay. So definitely want to be respectful of time. We're coming up on an hour here. I'd like to kind of round out this discussion. We're definitely going to have to talk again when you have time.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Because I still have a bajillion questions. So, but for this episode, we'll kind of wrap up with the main question that I usually ask every guest, which is, what is jump rope to you?
Oh man. Jump rope to me is, everything I could have wanted in an activity. Is there, I remember growing up when I was a little kid and just being obsessed with like Indiana Jones and other characters who had a whip.
That's awesome.
I don't know why, but like I was just drawn to that image of a rope, And so jump rope has that sort of like fantasy element where like you're manipulating an object that many people never have the ability to do. I like it because it keeps me physically healthy. I've been jumping rope for 28 years and for the last like 10 years, that's really all I've done for exercise is just jump rope and jump rope related training. I love it that I can pour my creativity into it because no matter what you're doing, you can always do something differently with jump rope. And so that's why I've been, making these systems and movies and stuff is just like anything that I can think about creatively, I can do it with jump rope or do it for jump. Yeah. And now it's my career too. So it's the way I like to live is just surrounded by this environment, this kind of these people, these creative people, these fit people, and just feed off of each other, feed off the energy. I love showing an audience what you can do and helping them to understand that physical fitness is important. So yeah, there's just so many things that jump rope is to me. But yeah, in general, jump rope is life. If you want, the sound bite there. So
yeah, the little pull quote. No, that makes a lot of sense, man. There is so much good stuff in this episode. Seriously, Lee, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's been so fun. Good. Yeah. The next time we talk, I'm going to have a whole other list of like a bunch of crazy stuff to get into. So,
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time. And I definitely want to be respectful. You got to get back to your day or your night. It's nighttime where you're at, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So thank you again and have a good rest of your night.
All right. Thank you very much, Nate.
Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say one last thing. One of my main goals for this podcast is to share the stories, of other jumpers and provide a full picture about everything that's possible with a jump rope. The more people that hear this, the better. And it would really help me out if you sent this podcast to somebody you know, whether in real life or digitally on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you use. It would mean the world to me. So that's it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, lunch, evening, whatever time it is for you right now. See you later.